TMZ Weasel is back with breaking news. Henry Cejudo seems to be coming out of retirement. He put himself back into the USADA pool. He is now going to get tested like regular fighters, and he has his sights set on becoming a triple champion. He wants to fight Volkanovski, and he seems to be serious about it. His manager also said that Henry Cejudo is solely focused on fighting and training at the moment. Does that mean the bantamweight title is off the tables for him? He wants to fight Volkanovski, but will he pass up Aljamain Sterling? Here is the issue. The bantamweight division is a lot more busy at the top than the featherweight division is, because there isn't a clear-cut #1 contender at 145 besides Max Holloway, who has already fought Volkanovski twice and lost to him twice. So even though that's the fight that has to happen, there's no other fights in the featherweight division that's really interesting for Volkanovski. It seems like the fans don't care about anything else that's going on there, even the Holloway fight. The Holloway fight doesn't really have much excitement around it. We already seen it twice, and we already see Volkanovski beat him twice. And even Volkanovski himself said that he's ready to jump up to 155. He seems uninterested with the guys at 145 at the moment. I mean, I would love to see Yair Rodriguez fight him. I would love to see Zabit come back and do something. But if we're going to be honest, none of those fights are as interesting as Henry Cejudo, for the first time in his career, jumping to 145 to fight Alexander Volkanovski. We have one of the greatest featherweights of all time versus one of the greatest fighters of all time, trying to make history, and it will propel Volkanovski even further to be that top #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And it seems like a lot of you guys want it as well. I mean, I would love to see this. This is my #1 fight for the featherweight division. I love these kind of fights where someone's trying to chase history, a high-level fight between two of the best fighters in the world. And let's not kid ourselves, that fight can be extremely competitive. Volkanovski, in my opinion, is the most skilled fighter in the UFC, and it would be interesting to see how he goes up against someone who is smaller than him, where skill is a little bit more important the lower the weight classes go. And Cejudo has shown time and time again to be able to defeat even more skilled fighters like Demetrius Johnson, Dominic Cruz, TJ Dillashaw, and Henry Cejudo will be one of the only fighters that can beat Volkanovski at one specific skill set of the game: wrestling. Cejudo's powerful on the feet, he's very fast with his hands, quick to cover distances, and he has an awkward, powerful striking style that's very linear. And he could hurt Volkanovski if he hits him. But even with all that together, I don't think he's going to handle Volkanovski on the feet. The takedowns themselves, either getting Volk to the ground or just using feints off of them to set up his hands, this is the path to victory for Henry Cejudo. He may be the only fighter at featherweight, active at least, to be able to take Volkanovski to the ground and actually present a wrestling problem to him. But there is one issue when it comes to this kind of style. If Henry has to resort to his wrestling to win, he is smaller. The smaller you are, the harder it's going to be for you to wrestle. So perhaps he's going to have to use his speed advantage with his hands and his footwork in order to catch Volkanovski off guard when it comes to his takedowns. That's the thing I'm really interested in. How is Henry Cejudo's speed going to impact this fight? And even though we talk about him being smaller, it's not like he's that much smaller than Volk. It's not something that we've never seen before. Cejudo claims that he walks around 165 pounds. That's roughly the same weight Volkanovski weighs inside the cage, so we could probably speculate that Cejudo may be in the 150s, maybe high 150s when he's inside the cage with Volkanovski. The weight difference might be somewhat like 7-8 pounds, which is pretty big, but it's absolutely doable. This is not a David versus Goliath kind of matchup. I mean, we even hear Michael Bisping talk about it, and yes, he is smaller. That's a given. He's even small for the bantamweight division, but he's going to have the speed advantage, which is something that Volkanovski doesn't necessarily fight up against. Someone who is much faster than he is. And also, I'll never put it past someone as successful as Cejudo is. He's a gold medalist from the Olympics, double champion, beat some of the greatest fighters of all time, has probably the greatest stretch of victories in UFC history. And the guy knows how to adapt in a fight. His fight IQ is extremely high. So if the size is giving him some issues, I mean, remember, he was much smaller than Marlon Moraes in his prime. Moraes is a huge bantamweight, actually the same height as Volkanovski, and he walks around like 165 to 170 pounds. The guy is massive for that bantamweight division. And yes, Cejudo had a little bit of trouble with the size in the beginning, especially when it comes to that power, but he adapted in the fight and he figured it out. That's something that a lot of people did not expect from Henry Cejudo. He also did the same kind of thing with a smaller opponent, smaller than he was, faster, more technical, in Demetrius Johnson, adapted in that fight, especially off a shaky first round where it looked like his leg was hurt. He weathered past that and found a way to win through his wrestling. And let's say he happens to get the fight and beats Volkanovski. We might have to be talking about Henry Cejudo as top 3 greatest fighters of all time. There's an argument for it because he would be the only fighter in history to be a champion in 3 different divisions. A guy who fought in the flyweight division, winning belts all the way up to featherweight. But here's the thing. Him fighting Volkanovski might not happen Or at least it's not logical business-wise. Because number one, Cejudo's not a big star. So what is the UFC really gaining at doing this? If they're not making more money, why would they have Cejudo jump up and fight Volkanovski? And here's the biggest issue. What if Cejudo wins? What if he dethrones the featherweight champion? Yes, he makes history and people are going to be guarding him as like the greatest fighter of all time. But at what cost? The UFC will lose their featherweight champion and run the risk of Cejudo retiring right afterward. He beats the champ, dethrones them, retires, vacates the belt. Now the featherweight division is left in shambles, and now Volkanovski's gonna have to fight Holloway for a vacant title? That would make that fight even less exciting to many people. You potentially hurt Volk's chances of jumping up divisions there, because that's the big move for Volk to do. Go up to lightweight and challenge like Charles Oliveira or something. That would be a pretty big fight. And with Volk losing to Cejudo, Volk will probably be forced to stay in the featherweight division and build up that hype he had as one of the best fighters in the world. So doing this is a little bit too risky, I believe, for business, and ultimately there isn't much reward to it. But there is always the option for Henry Cejudo to try to reclaim that bantamweight title. How does a fight between him and Aljamain Sterling go? It's interesting because it'll be the first time that Cejudo goes up against an elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist in MMA. Demetrius Johnson is also categorized as a very good grappler on the ground, but I think Sterling being much bigger, stronger than DJ was, and a bit slicker at getting the back, it would cause Cejudo some issues if he tries to take Sterling to the ground, which I don't think he would try to do. I think he would approach the fight in a sprawl and brawl strategy, use the power that he has, the speed that he's able to cover distances with, always pressure Sterling and just deny all the takedowns. Cejudo is really short, so it's going to be hard for Sterling to get under him, but it potentially won't be that hard for him to get his back. Let's say he fakes the takedown and just uses a duck under, gets around the back and hooks in, similar to what Oliveira did against Dustin Poirier. But the issue that Sterling can run into when he tries this is Cejudo might just be fast enough to just evade him completely, where Sterling could barely even create contact with Cejudo. That's a tough fight for Sterling, man. Every time Sterling throws a shot, I can definitely see Cejudo being fast enough to punish him every time. Because for many of Sterling's punches, he's very long, but he does leave himself open. That's a close fight. I would love to see that as well. So what do you guys think? If Henry Cejudo comes back, would you rather see him go up against Volkanovski or go back to bantamweight and fight Aljamain Sterling? It's a great time for Henry Cejudo to come back. Can definitely go and make history out there. And man, we're going to be in for a treat because Cejudo's fights tend to be pretty exciting.